Ambassador Catherine Moore walked through the gleaming corridors of Nexus Prime, the largest space station in the known galaxy. Her boots clicked against the polished metal floors as she carried a datapad filled with evidence that would change everything. Behind her, Commander James Barrett kept his hand near his weapon, his eyes scanning every shadow. Nervous? James asked quietly. No, Catherine replied, though her jaw was tight. Just ready to end this. They entered the council chamber, a massive dome filled with representatives from 4 to 7 different alien species. Some looked almost human, others were completely bizarre, floating gas clouds, crystalline beings, creatures with too many limbs or no limbs at all. At the center of it all sat Lord Vex, the High Arbiter. His body was made of blue crystal that pulsed with cold light. He had ruled the council for over 1,000 years. Catherine stepped onto the speaker's platform. Her heart pounded but her voice stayed steady. Honored Council, I bring evidence of serious crimes. The Krillian Empire has destroyed 3 protected worlds in the Outer Reach. They have stripped entire ecosystems bare, killing billions of animals and plants. This violates Council Preservation Act 447. She activated the holographic display. Images of devastated planets filled the air. Scorched earth. Massive mining equipment. Dead forests. Several younger species gasped in horror. A massive reptilian creature rose from his seat. Ambassador Thorak of the Krillian Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales. His yellow eyes blazed with anger. Lies. Human propaganda. These worlds were legally purchased. From whom? Catherine challenged. They were protected sanctuaries. No one had the right to sell them. The human accuses us because she wants those systems for herself, Thorak hissed. She is a thief and a spy. She stole these documents from our sacred corporate archives. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported Catherine. Others defended the Krillians. The noise grew louder and louder until Lord Vex raised one crystalline hand. Silence. His voice cut through the chaos like breaking ice. Everyone fell quiet immediately. Ambassador Thorak, you make a serious accusation. Theft of sacred knowledge is one of our highest crimes. Catherine felt her blood run cold. This was not going the way she had planned. I invoke the ancient law, Thorak declared with a wicked smile. Trial by purification. Let the holy flames reveal the truth of her crimes. Catherine had read about trial by purification during her training. It was an ancient, barbaric practice that no one had used in centuries. The accused was placed in a chamber filled with superheated plasma fire. If you survived, you were innocent. If you died, you were guilty. Of course, no one ever survived plasma that burned at 50,000 degrees. You cannot be serious, Catherine said, trying to keep her voice calm. I am a sitting ambassador. This is murder disguised as law. But Lord Vex was already consulting with the elder species. They whispered among themselves in languages Catherine did not understand. Then came the vote. One by one, the ancient civilizations voted yes. The younger species tried to vote no, but they were outnumbered. The council has spoken, Lord Vex announced. The human delegation will face trial by purification in 3 days. Until then, they are confined to diplomatic quarters. James moved toward his weapon, but Catherine grabbed his arm hard. Stand down. That is an order. Armed guards surrounded them and escorted them away. As they left, Catherine saw Thorak smiling. This had been his plan all along. He wanted humanity silenced, and the council was helping him do it. In their locked quarters, James paced back and forth like a caged animal. We need to contact Earth. Get a rescue ship. This is insane. No, Catherine said firmly. If we run, it proves we are guilty. They would not actually execute a diplomat. It would mean war. Dr. Emma Clark, their team scientist, looked up from her computer terminal. Her face was pale. Catherine, I have been reading the historical records. They have done this 4 to 7 times in council history. All 4 to 7 people died in the flames. Every single one. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The plasma burns at 50,000 degrees, Emma continued, her voice shaking. Nothing survives. Not metal. Not stone. Not flesh. This is not a trial. It is an execution with a legal excuse. Catherine walked to the window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth. Home. Her daughter Emily had just turned 8 years old. She thought about never seeing her again. James, Catherine said softly. When this is over, whatever happens, tell my daughter I was fighting for what was right. Catherine, do not talk like that. That is an order, Commander. The next 2 days passed like a nightmare. Catherine tried every legal appeal she could think of, but the Council rejected them all. Earth's government sent desperate messages demanding her release, but Lord Vex dismissed them as emotional outbursts from an immature species. On the morning of the 3rd day, guards came for Catherine. They escorted her to the Chamber of Purification, a perfect sphere lined with ancient symbols that glowed with orange light. Council members filled observation galleries above, settling in to watch like people at a sporting event. James and Emma were forced to stand behind an energy barrier. James slammed his fists against it uselessly, shouting for them to stop. Emma was crying so hard she could barely stand. Any last words, Ambassador Moore? Lord Vex asked. His tone was almost bored, as if this happened every day. Catherine looked up at the cameras. She knew this was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Earth was watching. Her daughter was watching. She took a deep breath. To the Krillian Empire, the truth will come out. To the Council, history will judge you for this. To Earth. Her voice cracked slightly. Do not let them silence the truth. Remember what we stood for. No matter what happens here, fight for justice. Always. Lord Vex gestured with one crystalline hand. Energy fields locked Catherine in place at the center of the chamber. She could not move her arms or legs. Begin the purification. The plasma ignited. Catherine's scream lasted only a few seconds before the superheated fire consumed everything. The chamber filled with blinding white light so bright that people had to look away. When the light faded, there was nothing left. Not even bones. Just ash and silence. The flames have spoken, Lord Vex announced coldly. Guilt is proven. Let this be a lesson to all who challenge Council authority. James stared at the empty chamber, his face completely emotionless. But inside, something had broken. Or maybe something had been forged. Emma collapsed to her knees, sobbing. You have 24 hours to leave Nexus Prime, a guard told them. If you return, you will face the same judgment. As they were escorted back to their shuttle, James stopped. He turned and looked back at the Council chambers. His voice was quiet, but every word carried a promise that would echo across the stars. You just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The execution broadcast reached Earth in real time. 8 billion people watched Ambassador Catherine Moore burn alive on their screens. For exactly 10 seconds, the entire planet fell silent. Then the rage began. Protests erupted outside every alien embassy on Earth. In New York, Tokyo, and London, riots consumed entire city blocks. The United Earth Government building in Geneva had to activate defense shields as crowds surrounded it, demanding immediate war. President Richard Foster stood before an emergency session of Parliament. His face looked carved from stone. The Galactic Council has murdered our ambassador in cold blood. I am recalling every human diplomat from Council space immediately. We demand the surrender of those responsible within 30 days, or we will take them by force. The message reached Nexus Prime within hours. Lord Vex watched it and laughed. Juvenile posturing. Humans are emotional children. They will calm down in a few weeks and forget this ever happened. But he was wrong. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, Admiral William Graves stood in a secure command center. Holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship in space. His officers waited nervously for orders. Activate Protocol Moore, Admiral Graves said. Everyone froze. Protocol Moore was the contingency plan, the one humanity had prepared in secret for 50 years. The one they prayed they would never use. Sir, that means. I know what it means. Execute the order. Now. Across the solar system, hidden military facilities came online. While humanity had played the role of peaceful junior members of the Council, they had been studying, learning, building. They had catalogued the weaknesses of every Council species. They had mapped every military installation. They had infiltrated every communication network. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for the day when the Council would show its true face. That day had arrived. On Mars, Dr. Robert Hayes worked frantically in a weapons laboratory. How much time do we have? He asked his assistant. 30 days until the deadline. Then we work faster. Robert stared at the prototype weapon in front of him. It was called an entropy cannon, and it could age enemy ships 1,000 years in seconds. Beside it were designs for nanite swarms that could dismantle space stations molecule by molecule, and quantum mines that could phase enemies into dead dimensions where they would simply cease to exist. Humanity's hidden arsenal was about to be unveiled, and it would terrify the galaxy. Captain Sarah Mitchell received her orders while hiding in the lower levels of Nexus Prime. She was a human intelligence agent who had been posing as a cargo worker for 3 years. The message was simple and direct: begin sabotage. Weapons free. Sarah smiled grimly and activated her team. Across Council space, dozens of human sleeper agents did the same. They had been waiting patiently for this moment, living normal lives while preparing for war. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, something strange was happening. Thorak was celebrating with Krillian military commanders in a private room. The humans are broken, he laughed. Their threats are empty. We can take their border colonies easily now. What Thorak did not know was that Marcus Webb, a human spy, was recording everything from a hidden position in the ventilation system. The truth came pouring out during their celebration. The Krillians had planned the entire trial from the beginning. They wanted humanity's resource-rich colonies and needed to eliminate opposition first. Catherine's execution had been murder and a land grab disguised as justice. Marcus transmitted everything to Earth. Admiral Graves watched the recording with cold fury. So it was premeditated murder, he said quietly. Noted. Day 30 arrived. Lord Vex sat comfortably in the council chambers, confident and secure. The human deadline passes with no response, he told the other council members. As I predicted, they are all bark and no bite. They will. Every alarm in Nexus Prime began shrieking at once. My lord, a technician screamed. Quantum signatures detected everywhere. Ships emerging from slip space. Where? Lord Vex demanded. Everywhere. 4 to 7 systems simultaneously. It is impossible, they do not have the technology. But they did. Human warships appeared across Council space with precision that proved years of planning. And at Nexus Prime itself, a massive fleet dropped from slip space. Leading them was a dreadnought called the Catherine's Fury. Admiral Graves's voice echoed across every council communication channel. You had 30 days to surrender the guilty. You chose pride over justice. This is humanity's answer. The first entropy cannon fired. A Krillian battleship trying to intercept human forces suddenly aged 1,000 years in 5 seconds. Its hull corroded and turned to rust. Systems failed. The ship collapsed inward like crumpled paper. What was that? A council commander screamed in terror. That was 50 years of preparation, Admiral Graves replied coldly. Fire all batteries. Human ships unleashed weapons the council had never imagined. Nanite swarms poured from missile tubes, disassembling defending stations molecule by molecule like invisible ants eating a picnic. Quantum displacement mines phased enemy vessels into dead dimensions. The ships simply vanished mid-battle, their final screams cutting off as they ceased to exist. The Council Defense Fleet, so confident in their ancient technology, disintegrated within 20 minutes. Inside the council chambers, Lord Vex watched in horror as his defenses crumbled. Impossible. They were primitives. How could they? Because you underestimated us, said a voice from the chamber entrance. Commander James Barrett stood there with a special operations team. They had infiltrated during the chaos, using maintenance tunnels that Marcus Webb had mapped weeks earlier. Seize them. Lord Vex commanded desperately. His guards raised weapons and collapsed immediately as human sonic disruptors scrambled their nervous systems. They fell unconscious before they could fire a single shot. James walked slowly toward the High Arbiter. Every step was deliberate. You burned my friend alive. You broadcast it across the galaxy. You thought we would just accept it and move on. That was your biggest mistake. He activated a device on his wrist. Restraining fields locked around Lord Vex and every council member who had voted for Catherine's execution. Thorak roared and struggled uselessly against the energy bonds. What are you doing? Lord Vex demanded, his crystalline body flickering with fear. Giving you a trial, James replied coldly. By your own laws. Understanding dawned in the Arbiter's eyes. No. You cannot. We are the Council. We make the laws. You were the Council, James corrected. He opened a broadcast channel to every planet in Council space. People of the galaxy, 3 days ago you watched these beings murder our ambassador for speaking truth. Tonight, you will watch justice being served. His team dragged Lord Vex, Thorak, and 12 other conspirators toward the Chamber of Purification. The same chamber where Catherine had died. Please. Thorak begged, his arrogance completely gone. We can negotiate. Resources, territory, anything you want. Catherine offered you truth, James said without emotion. You answered with fire. Now you understand what fire means. The chamber of purification activated. The same plasma that had consumed Catherine Moore now ignited around her killers. Their screams echoed across the galaxy just as hers had. James watched without blinking until there was only silence and ash. Justice is served. While James delivered justice on Nexus Prime, Admiral Graves led the main human fleet toward Krillia Prime, the Krillian homeworld. The Krillian Empire's remaining military forces gathered for one final desperate defense of their planet. Admiral, we have targeting solutions on all major cities, his tactical officer reported. We can end this in one strike. Admiral Graves stared at the planet on his view screen. Billions of Krillians lived down there. Most of them had nothing to do with Catherine's murder. He thought about what Catherine would want, what she had stood for. Negative, Graves said firmly. We are not genocides. We are not monsters. Deploy the reset protocol. From the human ships, a cascade of electromagnetic pulses swept across Krillia Prime. The pulses were not destructive in the traditional sense. They were transformative. Every piece of technology above pre-industrial level simply stopped working. Power grids died. Computers erased themselves. Starships became dead metal floating in orbit. Communication satellites went dark. Within 6 hours, the mighty Krillian Empire collapsed into the Stone Age. Their weapons were useless. Their ships were scrap. Their empire was gone. A memorial satellite deployed in orbit around Krillia Prime. It broadcast Catherine Moore's final words on eternal repeat for anyone who managed to build a radio receiver: do not let them silence the truth. Remember what we stood for. Back on Nexus Prime, the station was secured. Dr. Emma Clark stood in the ruined council chambers with representatives from dozens of younger species who had been oppressed under the old system. We need new laws, Emma said. Real ones. Where diplomatic immunity is absolute. Where justice matters more than age or power. Where truth cannot be burned away. We should call them the Vasquez Protocols, suggested a young alien from the Talland species. Vasquez was Catherine's middle name. Perfect, Emma agreed. Article 1. No species shall harm diplomatic envoys under any circumstances. Violation results in immediate military response. The room erupted in agreement. For the first time in galactic history, diplomats would be truly protected. 6 months later, the Federation of Free Worlds held its first official session. Dr. Emma Clark stood as its first president. Representatives from 63 species filled the new chamber built on Unity Station, the renamed Nexus Prime. The old council is dead, Emma announced. We build something better on its ashes. Every species here has an equal voice, regardless of age or military power. That is our founding promise. The Vasquez Protocols became galactic law with a unanimous vote. On Earth, President Foster dedicated the memorial to Catherine Moore in Geneva. An eternal flame burned at the center of a beautiful garden. Catherine's statue stood tall, her face determined and brave. We never wanted to be warriors, Foster told the assembled crowd. We wanted to be explorers and friends. But when forced to choose between submission and justice, we chose justice. 12,000 humans died in the war that followed. We must never forget their sacrifice or what it purchased. Emily Moore, now 9 years old, laid flowers at her mother's statue. Admiral Graves stood beside her in his formal uniform, his medals gleaming in the sunlight. Your mother changed everything, he told her gently. I know, Emily replied quietly. But it cost so much. 12,000 people died because of what happened to her. Graves knelt down to her level. Your mother would not want those deaths either. But she would want you to understand something important. Those people did not die because of her. They died because evil people chose murder over justice. We stopped those evil people. Sometimes that is the only choice good people have. Emily nodded, trying to understand. It would be years before she fully grasped what her mother's death had meant. Across the galaxy, the elder species retreated to their home systems. Their fleets were disabled. Their authority was broken. Some accepted the new order and began working with the Federation. Others raged uselessly in isolation, bitter that their thousands of years of dominance had ended. On Krillia Prime, the Krillian people struggled without technology. Then human aid workers arrived with food, medicine, and basic equipment. Nothing advanced, but enough to survive. Why help us? An elderly Krillian asked bitterly. We tried to destroy you. Dr. Robert Hayes, leading the aid mission, replied simply, because Catherine Moore would not want you to starve. She wanted justice, not revenge. There is a difference. In the Federation chambers, younger species proposed new exploration initiatives. Representative Bryn from Tella stood excitedly. For 3,000 years, elder species explored while we stayed confined to our systems. Now we are free to reach the outer galaxies together as equals. Agreed, Emma said. But exploration must be ethical. No more strip mining protected worlds. No more exploitation of weaker species. We explore together, or not at all. The vote passed unanimously. A new era had begun, built on the ashes of the old council and the sacrifice of one brave woman who refused to be silenced. 20 years passed. Emily Moore, now 28 years old, stood on the bridge of the FSS Catherine Moore, the Federation's flagship exploration vessel. She had become its captain 3 years earlier, following in her mother's footsteps of diplomacy and exploration. "Captain, we are receiving a signal from the planet below," her communications officer reported. "The Dorvani want to meet us. They are asking if we come in peace." Emily smiled. The Dorvani were the 15th new civilization her ship had discovered. "Tell them yes. Tell them we come as friends, and we will never force them into anything they are not ready for." The Federation had grown to 93 member species. The Vasquez Protocols remained its most sacred law. Not a single diplomat had been harmed in 20 years. On Unity Station, Dr. Emma Clark addressed the Federation Council. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but her voice remained strong and clear. 20 years ago, the old Galactic Council burned Ambassador Catherine Moore alive for speaking truth. Today we honor her memory by living the principles she died for. But I must warn you all, peace requires constant vigilance. She paused and looked around the chamber. Recently, the Vorten Collective proposed efficiency measures that would give older species priority in resource allocation. I rejected it immediately. We will never return to the old ways. Every species has equal voice and equal rights, regardless of age. That is not negotiable. The entire assembly erupted in thunderous applause. On Krillia Prime, the Krillian civilization had slowly rebuilt over 2 decades. They had technology again, but not weapons of war. Young Krillians learned about the war in their schools, about how their leaders' greed and cruelty had destroyed their empire. A Krillian student raised her hand in class. "Teacher, will humans ever forgive us for what we did?" The teacher, who had lived through the war and the terrible years that followed, thought carefully before answering. "They already have forgiven us. When we were starving, they brought food. When we were sick, they brought medicine. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. We must never forget what our leaders did, so we never repeat those mistakes." The Zethari species had transformed completely. Once they had been the most arrogant species in the galaxy, hoarding knowledge and looking down on younger civilizations. Now they shared everything freely. Lyra, their high representative, worked tirelessly to repair old wounds. "We wasted 3,000 years protecting our supposed superiority," Lyra told a gathering of students. "In 20 years of sharing knowledge, we have achieved more than in all our previous history. Pride blinded us. Catherine Moore opened our eyes, though it cost her everything." On Earth, the memorial to Catherine Moore had become one of the most visited places on the planet. Millions came every year to place flowers and leave messages. The eternal flame burned day and night, never going out. Emily returned home once each year to visit. She stood before her mother's statue and spoke as if her mother could hear her. "Mom, the Catherine Moore made first contact with the Dorvani this week. They are beautiful, peaceful people. They remind me of how humans used to be before the war." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Sometimes I wonder if you would approve of what we have become. We are the strongest military power in the galaxy now. We carry weapons that can destroy entire civilizations. Does that make us the very thing you fought against?" The wind rustled through the memorial gardens, but there was no answer. "But then I remember," Emily continued, "you did not fight against power. You fought against injustice. We use our strength to protect the weak, not to dominate them. We enforce the Vasquez Protocols not for conquest, but for peace. I think that is what you wanted." Behind her, an elderly voice spoke. "She would be incredibly proud of you." Emily turned. Admiral Graves, now 83 years old but still sharp, walked slowly toward her with a cane. "Do you really think so?" Emily asked. "I know so," Graves replied. "I see your mother's commitment to justice in you. In Emma. In James. In every person who refuses to let her sacrifice be meaningless." He gestured to the memorial. "Your mother died for this. For a galaxy where justice is not optional. Where the powerful cannot murder the weak without consequence. where truth matters more than tradition. That evening, Emily stood before billions watching across the galaxy. It was Justice Day, the anniversary of her mother's death. She read her mother's final transmission one more time. Do not let them silence the truth. Remember what we stood for. Fight for justice. Always. Emily looked into the camera. We remember, Mom. 20 years later, 93 species stand together because you refused to be silenced. We will never stop fighting for what you believed in. The eternal flame burned brighter as night fell. Across the stars, humanity and its allies stood together as guardians of justice, truth, and courage. The galaxy would never forget Catherine Moore, and it would never again burn diplomats for speaking truth.